Did you play Dragon Age Origins?
I did. I didn't finish, but I did.
Okay. Do you remember the process of getting your relationships up with your companions was mostly involved in, aside from their personal quest, it mostly involved buying them stuff?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, if you were trying
Set a
to
dangerous precedent for my dating life.
exactly, yeah.
I'm broke.
Hello, and welcome to Khyber Shards, where we're all from Texas and Oklahoma, and we are done with our 7-day free trial of Alaska and would like to send it on back. I'm Philip.
I'm Colin.
So this Khyber Shards extra is going to be kind of by the seat of our pants because we're kind of doing it this way because we are the people who had consistent power at the moment and could trust our electricity to stay on and our internet to continue to function long enough to do this. So that's why we're going to do this. But we're going to do something a little bit different. We've got just one question was directed at me for over the last few episodes, and we're going to answer that. But then Colin, as we've established, is new to 5th edition. And to D&D and to a certain degree to role-playing games just in general, although he has played a role-playing game I haven't, as we've established. But today we're coming up on 3rd level. We haven't hit it yet, but we're coming up. And so today we're going to talk through subclass options for the Barbarian and see what Colin thinks he might want to do for Pog. So
It's going to be weird. I guarantee it.
It will almost certainly be weird.
This video is exactly like my last relationship. I'm here because I was the only option around. That's what I'm doing here, just in case you were wondering.
That's not what I meant.
Okay, so before we get into that part, we do have one question for Philip from Darren off of the Q&A tier in the Discord, the Geek Pantheon Discord, which is completely free to join, and you should have done it already.
And you'll find a link in the description below.
Right there, you saw it. Go ahead and join it and ask your questions in there. So, Darren asked, Khyber Shard question, Philip, currently using or planning to start using any kind of mechanics to track the web of relationship the player characters are bound to form with the various factions of Stormreach?
So I'm looking at a couple of things for that. I'm trying right now to see if I can find something that someone has already put in the time on and created to manage faction rep and that kind of thing. There are a lot of things like that in other systems that aren't 5th edition. I know there's some things like that. I think there's some things like that in Blades in the Dark.
Blades in the Dark, yep.
As well as a couple other systems I've played. But there are also a couple of creators who have created stuff for 5th edition with that in mind. And so I'm looking through a few of those things. There's one from Legendary Games that's called Ultimate Kingdoms, I think, that has rules for factions. Matt Colville has created some rules for factions. So there's that kind of thing out there. Yes, I want their relationship with factions to play a role. I want to be able to track that so they can gain, if they pull off this job they're doing in the game, or they've taken in the game right now, and they make some friends among the Swords of Karn, or if things go south with the Stormhammers. I want that to have an effect on the story that's not entirely arbitrary. So yes, I do want to have some kind of system in place for faction rep, but I haven't yet decided what it's going to look like at the moment. So plan to, and I will let you know what it is and where you can find it. Either if I create it, it will end up in the DM spellbook, or if I find it from someone else, I will be sure to put a link to where you can find that in a description of a later one of these extra videos, so that you can check it out for your game, because I use a lot of material created by other fabulous creators for 5th edition, and I definitely want to point people to them as much as I can. So
What's fascinating about that question is it's an answer that I didn't know. That is good to know, that these relationships will be of lasting impact and tracked, no less. Oh boy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I to clarify, Darren's question was about factions, and that's what I'm going to track. I'm not like, there are systems out there that will let you track individual NPC rep, essentially. So you could have rep with Solarka or Harish.
Sorry. You said her name and things just got warm in here.
Or other individual NPCs, and I don't want to mess with that, because I want that to just be narrative and just be free form and flowing. But with organizations that you're involved in, if you guys, just for the sake of argument, if you guys got real close with the Swords of Karn and started to really work for them, there would be benefits to working with that kind of militant organization. There would be things you would have access to and protections you would have and that sort of thing. And so I want to be able to track the progression of that, and that kind of thing can be fun, and also it can be excessively heavy on the bookkeeping. And so that's kind of the line that you try to walk, is something interesting but not a hassle for either the DM or the players in terms
But we also did
track.
just cover the fact that you're basically free, just like wheeling this whole thing, right? Like,
yeah.
So you could stand to use a little bit of time.
Oh yeah, totally. I could just, yeah.
It makes sense to not do it with characters at all, though, because I know Eric and myself, as far as the video game RPG world, you were literally in an Xbox party with me while I just ground out Cyberpunk, trying to get a relationship to where I wanted it to be, because I lose focus when there's too many forms of character currency.
Yeah.
And I think that's, faction wise, it does make sense.
Well, and if you remember, did you play Dragon Age Origins?
I did. I didn't finish, but I did.
Okay. Do you remember the process of getting your relationships up with your companions was mostly involved in, aside from their personal quest, it mostly involved buying them stuff?
Yeah.
And so, if you were trying
set a dangerous precedent for my dating life.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm broke.
And that's the danger. With the Swords of Karn, we've done stuff for you, so you owe us, makes a certain degree of sense. We're trading favors. But with Pog's relationship with Solarka, that doesn't really make sense. Is I run these errands for you, and so you like me more. That it's kind of in reversing the way that friendship is actually develops,
sure.
right? Is you're my friend, so I do these things for you, not the other way around. Ideally, if that's the way your friendship is working, guys, that's
we're gonna
it's
have
not
to
ideal.
do a whole nother episode on that. That's gonna be a dangerous road.
It's going to be relationship therapy corner, which we're all
It's just going to be
terribly
a link to
unqualified
it.
for.
Just a link to a Dr. Phil episode is all we're gonna give.
That's probably wise. That would probably be the wiser choice for that kind of episode. So anyway, we're level 2.
Yeah, we are.
And level 3 is not so far over the horizon, and I've been starting to think about subclasses. Most of the characters, actually, all of them except Pog, I know what subclass they intend to play. Esri has already picked his, because druids and wizards pick theirs at 2nd level, which is a little weird. I don't really know why that. Yeah, I don't know why.
It's almost like the player doesn't know what he's going to choose.
And so he's, of course, taken the Circle of Swarms, and then I know what Ari is taking for his Pact Boon, and I know what Shade is going to take for her Ranger Conclave. But we don't yet know what Pog is going to take for his Primal Path. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk through this, and hopefully that will be interesting. In best case scenario, it might even be useful, but hopefully it would be. And the reason I want to do these things, the reason I, as a DM, that I try to think ahead like this, is some subclasses, there's not necessarily a big narrative element to it. Esri had already established that his mark gives him this connection to the sort of in-between state of life and death. And since he's playing his spellcasting, his druid spellcasting, as primarily the power of his mark, the Circle of Swarms is really just furthering that narrative. It doesn't require him to... He's not actually joining a druid circle, and so we don't need necessarily a big narrative bit for that. But for Ari, this is a good example, without telling you what Ari's picked. Warlocks, their subclass is a pact boon. Their patron gives them something. They obtain usually either a familiar or a weapon or a new or an improved spell book. And that kind of needs some explaining. You suddenly just walk into the room and you've got this new thing. And I like to try and think ahead so that I can create a little bit of narrative around that for each of them to sort of explain where it's coming from, if it's warranted. I mean, again, like with Esri, RA didn't want Esri to be joining a druid circle yet. And so we didn't mess with anything there. But I don't know what Pog's going to do, and maybe it will require some story, and maybe it won't, but better to talk through it ahead of time with your players than be surprised and have to try and cram it all into one session when they all level up to 3.
And if you find this neither interesting nor helpful, thanks for watching to this point. Please hit the like button, and we'll see you next week.
It's true.
When experienced people take back over.
And if you find this neither useful nor interesting, give us a comment and let us know what you would find useful and or interesting for these little extra shows, because we're open to a lot of things. We don't always have a lot of questions asked, and so we're open to trying out different things on our little Friday extras. So let us know what you think.
So hit us up.
Yep.
What are you looking for? Okay, so let's explain from the basics here, because just so you guys watching know, we started deciding we were going to do this with a deep introspective discussion. We decided we were going to make this content about 7 minutes ago as a spitballed idea of what we could do. And when I asked Philip, what do I need to read from these web pages, he said, nah, I can just run you through it. So
that's
my
unfair,
encyclopedia...
Colin. We've been recording for a whole 12 minutes.
Okay, so 13 minutes ago we decided to make this. My encyclopedic friend here, what is the primal path? What is this changing about Pog?
So obviously the key mechanic of a barbarian is rage, is their ability to go into a sort of altered state that makes them nearly unstoppable in battle. Rage makes you more durable. Rage gives you additional damage. Rage makes you harder to affect with spells. So rage is sort of the key. And what the primal path does is the primal path messes with that a little bit. The primal path takes and more deeply defines your rage, either its source or its nature in some way or another. So barbarians are not usually part of an organization. Like a lot of like paladins, when they get to 3rd level, they swear an oath of some kind. Rangers sometimes join a conclave. Druids join a circle. Wizards or bards join a college. So there's a lot of organizational things. Barbarians don't really have that. And so it's more like you've, as a barbarian, you've unlocked something new about yourself. And with Pog, that could be connected to his mark, that could be connected to his past in the Shadow Marches and his tribal roots among the among the orcs and half orcs of the Shadow Marches. It could be something else entirely that we work out what the narrative is. So that's the idea of the Primal Path. It will usually give some sort of mechanical effect to your rage, as well as giving you usually some other neat toys to play with. So
Awesome.
So the official D&D Primal Paths that are out right now are the Ancestral Guardian Path, the Battle Rager, the Beast, the Berserker, the Storm Herald, the Totem Warrior, Wild Magic, and the Zealot. So I'm just going to go through those and kind of talk about what the flavor of each one is, what the sort of story to each one is, rather than get too much into the mechanics, and then we can look at the mechanics of the ones that seem at least a little bit interesting to you.
Perfect.
So Ancestral Guardians is you have some sort of deep connection to your ancestors. So it's a very sort of shamanistic connection back to those who have come before you. And the cool thing about the Path of the Ancestral Guardian is you can, in battle, summon ancestral spirits to fight alongside you and protect you in battle, as well as harming your enemies. It sort of creates this field around you that makes you harder to hit and also can damage those who try to hit you. And it gets bigger and more powerful as it goes on. The Battle Rager is very similar in flavor to the Berserker, which we'll come to in a minute. The Battle Rager, in official terms, is a Forgotten Realms thing that's connected specifically to dwarves, and Battle Ragers will wear this specialized spiked armor and just sort of fling themselves on their enemies.
Like the
whirling
Jackass
balls of
scene
doom.
with the Velcro wall. You just dive at them.
Yeah, but with iron spikes.
But
all
with
over you.
murder on your body.
With murder, yes, but with
Got it.
murder. That's usually true with Barbarian. It comes with murder. So that's the Battle Rager. The Path of the Beast is kind of Hulk-like. It's
Okay.
You sort of physically transform a little bit, and you take on a form of a beast, and you gain a bite attack, or you can gain a bite attack, or you can gain claws. You could grow a tail. You actually transform, and so it's a little bit of a Hulk thing, a little bit of a werewolf thing to it, and so it's very much about actual transformation when you rage. You can go a lot of directions with that, but the Hulk is the one that always comes to my mind.
That feels like something that would have had to have been handed down through lineage, right? Wouldn't that be something you had inherited?
It could be. It would depend on how we could make a story out of it. So it could be something that we discover about Pog's lineage. It could also be, if you wanted to go that direction, we could arrange. We could arrange to have Pog infected with lycanthropy.
Oh man, the world of fantasy never ceases to entertain.
So the Barbarian is obviously a very primal, nature-driven character class, and there are lots of nature-driven groups in and around Stormreach. Just across the river from Stormreach, we've mentioned there's a permanent camp called the Tents of Rushame, which is inhabited mostly by nomadic giants who are very shamanistic, very druidic in their leanings, and so maybe this is something that they teach or they instruct. And so it could be a matter of Pog finds someone who teaches him this new method of how to let himself loose in this way, or he comes into possession of a magical artifact that allows him to sort of transform in this way when he rages. So there's lots of ways you could make the story around it, even if it doesn't sound like something that Pog already knows about himself.
Okay.
The Berserker is just straight up classic Barbarian. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's you just go,
Wolverine.
Yeah, you just go even more nuts in battle. Berserkers go all out. They're fast. It's a frenzy. You just go into an even more intense rage when you rage. So it's all about damage and hitting lots of people, and it's, if you just want to kill more, Berserker all the way. Like, Berserker will just make you so much better at murder.
Okay.
Storm Herald is an interesting one from Pog's connection, because what Storm Herald does is you choose an element that you are connected to, and at different levels that's represented by a type of storm, a type of environmental storm that you are connected to. And it affects your rage. So if you take the desert things or the sandstorm, then all of that's fire stuff. And so this would be one that you could very easily flavor as an evolution of Pog's Mark. Pog's Mark has grown or developed, or he's just discovered a new way of controlling it. And this would allow you gain some resistance against fire. You can deal extra fire damage on your weapons, that sort of thing. And so it's all about elemental damage. And with Pog's Mark, obviously we could connect it to fire and make it an outgrowth of that within the story. So that's kind of an interesting one. The Totem Warrior is like the Beast. It's connected to an animal idea, but it's more connected to animal spirits. And so this could be something where we tie it back to Pog's childhood, growing up in the Shadow Marches among druidic and ranger-focused cultures, where he could have learned all these stories about various totem beasts and develop a more direct connection to that lets him sort of emulate that. My wife actually played a Barbarian like this in our home game, where she did the Totem Warrior, and all of the totem beasts that she selected over the course of it were all big cats. And she played Black Panther, is
Awesome.
what she was going for. So she just took all the big cat ones and played it as inspired by Black Panther.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wild Magic is another one that could be tied to Pog's Mark, but in the opposite direction of Pog's Mark has grown, but he doesn't control it. Because Wild Magic lets you, when you rage, unleash some pretty unpredictable magic. And for example, basically whenever you enter a rage, we roll on a table and see what sort of strange magical effect occurs in addition to you going into a rage. And so this sort of unpredictable magical energy roils out. So just like a couple of examples from that one, we roll a d8, and on a roll of 2, you teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. Until your rage ends, you can use this effect again on each of your turns as a bonus action. So you just sort of temporarily become Nightcrawler.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's that kind of
Interesting.
that kind of thing. They're not all entirely beneficial, but all of them have a beneficial effect. They're not all purely good.
Some could also be detrimental.
Yeah. So there's lots of
Interesting.
craziness with that. Like if you roll a 1, every creature of your choice that you can see within 30 feet of you must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or take 1d12 necrotic damage. So you literally just and you gain temporary hit points equal to that. And so you literally just suck the life force out of people around you when you enter a rage.
Awesome.
So that one's pretty cool. It could again easily be Pog's Mark, or something else that's strange that happens to Pog, but it would obviously be much more of the power is growing and I don't have a full grasp of control over it. And then the Zealot, last one. The Zealot is for essentially it's a religious barbarian. It's sort of the barbarian with paladin leanings. You get to do damage drawn from a divine source. Now, within Eberron, that could mean Pog has developed some sort of religious feeling, or he's tied back to the religions of his childhood. But it could also mean some sort of encounter with a being that instills in Pog this power. But you're drawing on either a fiendish or a celestial power source when you rage that lets you do additional damage and also gives you some pretty cool support abilities. But also makes you very, very easy to bring back from the dead, just incidentally.
Well, that's going to completely negate my decision to have Pog die as quick as possible.
Yeah.
I really didn't think we'd be alive this far.
Well. I was trying. I put the mummy. I was going.
I appreciate it. We really got into it, too.
The dice just didn't work out.
I was hoping to be taken care of by forks and spoons, but it just didn't happen. The beauty and
Shade,
the Beast
Shade gotten in the way.
Her and her efficiency accidentally.
Yeah. So do any of those sound particularly interesting?
Okay, like as the new D&D player, yes, all of them.
Sure, of course.
They all sound super interesting, and there's a big part of me that's regretting having decided I was going to go through with this on the spot as opposed to digging down for hours.
As I say, you're not committing to something. We're sort of just talking through what your options are, and you can get an idea of it. So you don't have to end up taking what you lean towards at the end of this talk.
This is where the theater kid mixed with the X-Men fan is struggling, because I have a desire to make things work character-wise, while also being out and out enjoyable to play. The Ancestral Guardian I find very compelling to develop some kind of a familial tie, considering that we're so burnt out on the idea of that. I find that interesting. The same with the Zealot, for having declared, I believe, in a previous Answers episode, that Pog just doesn't have a relationship with religion. Any of them could be true. None of them are true to Pog, which I find to be very interesting. Storm Herald, I think the only reason that I'm probably leaning away from that is it's almost too much of a good thing, and I'd kind of like to play with, something varied as opposed to something that amplifies. Berserker, it just doesn't feel like Pog. There's more hurt than there is anger in that guy. Yeah, and
it's not bloodlust.
Yeah, he's just not. We're glory hungry. I'm not trying to cut ears off into a necklace. Battle Rager, I don't feel like an armored person. I just don't think my Pog has made himself an armor type. Beast is interesting to me. And so Totem Warrior is an animal spirit, and you're attuned, I suppose, to multiple of them over the course of your character.
You can be. So at 3rd, 6th, 10th, and 14th levels in Barbarian, you get another feature from your subclass, from your primal path. And with the Totem Warrior, each time you get to pick from a list of effects, each of which is associated with a type of animal.
Cool.
And so you could go very thematic and pick all the same animal and say it's just a deepening connection, Or each time you could choose a different animal and say you're attuning to more and more of the natural world, or more and more of the archetypal spirits.
And beast would be a commitment to that animal that I would gain lycanthropy toward, or is it like a half lycanthropy?
So beast is whatever the method of it is. It doesn't have to be. Lycanthropy would be one way to do it, but you are. So like the flavor text of it says, such a barbarian might be inhabited by a primal spirit, or be descended from shapeshifters. You can choose the origin of your feral might, determine it by. They suggest some. They have a little 4-option table for origins of the beast. One of your parents is a lycanthrope, and you've inherited some of their curse. You are descended from an archdruid and inherited the ability to partially change shape, because that's a major druidy thing. A fey spirit gifted you with the ability to adopt different bestial aspects, and an ancient animal spirit dwells within you, allowing you to walk this path. And so for that one, you are, over time, gaining abilities to partially transform. Your rage isn't just you go into a battle trance, it's you physically change when you go into a rage and let yourself loose.
Okay. These are so interesting and so varied.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to not worry too much about the high level things. It's about what I'm going to do right now, right?
Yeah, well, and it's so this is my way of approaching it, which obviously is not everyone's way of approaching it. My way of approaching it is to think about what both makes sense for your character, what doesn't, just strike you as out of character, and then among those things, pick the thing that sounds the most fun, because if you'll feel bummed out down the road if you pick something purely because of its flavor and you never want to use the mechanics, because flavor can be adjusted. Like we can, Eric is playing a warlock, and typically a warlock has a patron, an actual being that's giving it power. But Eric's playing that as he's drawing power from his mark. His mark is not a fiend or some other kind of creature that's giving him power. So we've reflavored that whole class in a lot of ways. So flavor can be adjusted if something draws your attention but doesn't quite feel exactly what you'd want it to be. But yeah, so you want to have fun playing the character, and you want the story to at least make sense, but it doesn't have to be all one.
Right. So on that, I feel myself, I'm really interested in Ancestral Guardian.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's interesting as a character whose family history is so splitting, and also mechanically.
Mm-hmm.
It seems very fun. Beast, I find intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that the mechanics fit the character that I'm creating.
Yeah.
It'd be super cool to
Sure.
half shapeshift into a wolf, but in an odd turn of phrase that will probably be used against me at some point, I don't think Pog's a biter.
Sure. Well, and I see that. I'm like, so one of the things I find myself, one of the things I find myself struggling with when I'm building a character and I look at something like the Beast, or when I'm playing a monk or something like that, is I just really like weapons.
Yeah.
Obviously that's not a surprise to anyone who knows anything about me. I like weapons, and I like describing my character using weapons. And so when I get into a class or a subclass that's going to want me to use natural weapons or unarmed attacks and that kind of thing, it always sort of like,
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from there.
So I don't know. That said, you'd think that Battle Rager would be more interesting to me. than I initially find it. So it would be fair to say then that Ancestral Guardian is a defensive kind of primal path.
It it does make you more survivable. So, for example, the initial thing is Ancestral Protectors. So at third level, spectral warriors appear when you enter a rage. While you are raging, the first creature to hit you with an attack on your turn becomes the target of the warriors, which hinder its attack. Until the start of your next turn, the target has disadvantage on any attack roll that isn't against you. So this is a way for you to draw attacks to you and protect those around you through a sort of aggro system.
Interesting.
To a degree. And then later
Would this be
on,
something visible to us?
it could be. This would be something you and I could. So if you wanted to go this direction, the nature of the ancestral spirits would be something you and I could work out as to whether it is literally spectral forms of Pog's ancestors coming to stand with him in battle, or whether it's something less visible, or whether they don't look like. I mean, these could be animal spirits. It could be totem animal spirits from that you learned about in the in the Shadow Marches. It could be if you were a character who had a big connection to the Fae. It could be a whole bunch of fairies and sprites flying around you, and that. So there's a lot of ways
too.
we could totally flavor this to fit what you want. But essentially, the idea is some sort of spirit is drawn either from you or drawn to you when you enter into this transcendent rage state that aids you in battle.
I find that very compelling.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I find Ancestral Guardian to be very interesting.
And there's a lot of cool things, later on with that one. At sixth level, they provide you with supernatural protection. They provide supernatural protection to those you defend. If you are raging and a creature you can see within 30 feet of you takes damage, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage by 2d6. So you can sort of throw a shield up around them. You can also, at 10th level, you can start to consult the spirits and get advice on what you were doing. You get a very, very limited access to some spells that are about augury and clairvoyance and that kind of thing. And so it has a nice. One of the things I like about this one, I've never played this one, but every time I've played a Barbarian, I've been tempted to. One of the things I like about this is it has a certain narrative arc to it. You start out and these things are just coming in and they're just fighting with you. You don't necessarily control what they're doing. They're just doing it. But then slowly you begin to be able to direct them in battle. And then at a certain point you get close enough that you can actually commune with them and talk with them, whatever they are.
The immediate description of it, and I don't believe you've played the franchise. You've never played Fallout, right?
I have not.
Okay, so in Fallout, and someone will definitely correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it started in 3, but there's a skill tree that involves the mysterious stranger who will just occasionally show up next to you in battle with a revolver and aid you. And as you read that, I was just like, oh, that's pretty cool. Just like having someone pop up, help with the battle, and then leave. And that's compelling to me to then eventually learn who and why. And that's interesting to me from a character standpoint. To give that stranger a story is really interesting. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be honest, in my non-commitment on YouTube, I feel like I'm going to wind up Ancestral Guardian. Awesome. I believe that's going to be the path I wind up taking.
That's really cool. And I enjoy this kind of choice. I like it when players make this kind of choice simply because I like the idea of you and I getting to have the conversation about what is this spirit, where is it coming from, what does it look like. I like that that conversation. I think that's a fun.
And that's why I'm enjoying the game that you're running so much, is that I'm enjoying this sense of discovery. And I hope that it's compelling to watch and to listen to from outside our virtual table. But those moments where we're learning things is so interesting to me. And I think that's why I'm gravitating towards that, is because instead of something that changes me as a character, it's something that I can learn.
Yeah,
and that's deeply compelling to Colin as a player. That is very interesting. So I think that's going to be the way I wind up going.
Awesome.
I've got 2 or 3 that I'll read a little deeper on, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to wind up Ancestral Guardian.
Cool.
Also, it's from title alone, it's the absolute last one I would have expected to be this interested in, just from Pog's character. You talk ancestry, and I'm like, well, I don't like my family. I don't have a family. Mom's dead, and she's the only one I liked. And so, to kind of unravel some of that in a way would be really interesting to me. I don't know. I'm compelled, and we haven't even done it yet.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I hope that this was in any way interesting to anyone out there. It was fun for me. This is really all we really did here was record the kind of conversations that we've been having, that I've been having with the individual players and sometimes with the group of players all along. This is more or less how me and Colin built Pog, is we sat down for a much longer time, obviously, and just sort of talked through the choices. And I mean, when we sat down, there wasn't even a class picked or anything like that. So it was, that was fun. And I've had lots of conversations like this with Casey and Eric about their subclass picks. And so, I hope this was entertaining or engaging in some way. Let us know what you think. Let us know what barbarian path you like and you would have gone with. Or
what would your Pog have looked like?
Yes.
the Pog at this point, how would you have taken him?
And if you've played the Ancestral Guardians Barbarian, let us know how it went and what your thoughts were on it. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there. You can find us on social media everywhere at The Geek Pantheon. Our website is thegeekpantheon.com. We're on all the social medias, which you can find in the description below. As Colin pitched earlier, we've got a Patreon, which is pretty active. We'd love to have you there and to join the conversation and talk with us about Khyber Shards, about Eberron Renewed, about Eric's DM videos and his streaming. And you can find the link to that also in the description below. And if you feel so moved, we also have a Patreon where we would dearly appreciate your support. Most of that support ends up going just back into technical improvements to our our players' various sound equipments and video and lighting and all the finagly stuff that makes video content a little more appealing to the eyes. So if you want, you can check that out at patreon.com/thegeekpantheon, where you can find the various tiers for that. And then you can also see Colin on Twitch. Tell us about that.
I'm on all socials as well as Twitch at SorryBTR. The O is a 0. Right now I am active consistently every Monday, looking for a bit more of an active schedule. We stream a lot of story games with the occasional social night with just some song requests, some chill chat while I rage at people that are better than me at video games.
Very occasionally, I even make an appearance, auditorially at least, on
true.
Colin when he's playing shooters. So
It's true.
So check us out, check Colin out, and we hope you'll come back on Monday for the next crazy episode of Khyber Shards.
Who knows what'll happen?
Who knows?
We do. We already recorded it. We know.
But you don't. Which
of
you?
Oh, it's an adventure.
Oh my gosh. All right. We're leaving now. Thank you for watching. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.